Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of what I'm calling the Quarantine Edition episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike. Today I have with me a special guest. Could you please tell me your name and what is the game that you're working on?
Yeah, I'm Johnson Brown, and I'm working on a game called Colony Siege.
Nice. So let's start with the very obvious, simple thing. What? So you are working under. So the studio name you're working under. You have to help me pronounce that.
Finifugal Games.
So, Finifugal Games. Walk me through, so everyone, because I assume not everyone's probably heard of you. What is Finifugal Games?
We're a new studio. This is the first game that we made. Our parent company has been developing software for about 14 years now, but this is the first video game. So we created a new studio for it, and we're coming up to pretty soon releasing the game in early access.
Nice. So the game is talking about is Colony Siege. So, I feel like Colony Siege is one of those games that, like, it's a genre that once you see it, people kind of fundamentally somewhat understand it, but if maybe you want to give, like, the elevator pitch of it.
Yeah, it's like a RTS and tower defense combined in a sci-fi setting. So it's a little bit of a genre blend. We wanted to take the parts we liked about tower defense and the parts we liked about RTS and get the best of both worlds into one game.
So immediately you make me sound like an idiot this week because this is actually the second interview I had this week with someone who's working on something in the vein of a tower defense because my whole thing was I'm really excited for this because tower defense I always argue is a genre that died because like they're still around but they're not around in that same volume they were in the early 20 teens. So I find it really funny you're the second one in a week.
Well, I think part of that is that a lot of people weren't innovating the genre. So that's one thing we tried to correct.
So let's maybe start there then. So you've been on the game, I'll assume, for a good chunk of its development, if not the entire thing. You...
Yeah, I did all the artwork.
Okay, so why... So, why a tower defense? And then, obviously you said you're blending genres, so what do you feel that you guys have immediately innovated that you thought were the problems with that genre?
Well, the first thing that we innovated was starting with the RTS baseline. So the whole control scheme, viewport, and unit command is all very RTS based. So when you start playing, it feels like an RTS, but tower defense is a big component to how you play through the game and survive.
Feel maybe then kind of the reason the genre either died or went into this hibernation is better probably putting it, is that more it was too passive?
I think so. Probably a little too passive, a little too slow paced. I think. Yeah, it just a little too locked in. A big part of it is a lot of the tower defense games only allow you to place towers in specified areas, or in some cases only specified slots. So what we did is we tried to open that up so you can place your tower's defenses virtually anywhere, and you can also use regular ground units, just like you would in an RTS. In fact, if you like the RTS element better, you can play almost exclusively using that.
To me is very interesting in the sense of so when a lot of people when they combine genres of games, it feels like they make both the usual assumption is well then you have to learn both genres from capacity of the parts you're using. Where you guys are making this point of no, you kind of just do the genre you want more.
Yeah, that's what our goal was, especially since we created the game from the ground up to support co-op. So we wanted it to be very viable for one player to work on fixed defenses and another player to work on mobile offenses and defenses.
Question I have. So we're gonna get into. I always argue I like the top level strategy games. So I like Civ and Sim City and that type of type where okay it's very easy to read strategy games,
Hmm.
and I always have issue when it gets more in the pure RTS of the StarCraft, those kind of games. I'm curious. So I think immediately what's intriguing me, guys, because I think Tower Defense inherently felt more of that top level. Have you
Hmm.
guys done anything? Do you think immediately to leave it towards the me types of players, or do you feel like you're going straight for that more hardcore strategy player?
I think we actually appeal to both. So for the people that like uh, straightforward tower defense can play that way. So you can win missions exclusively building towers, traps, and fixed defenses, or you can use ground units and other RTS elements to achieve what you want. So it's we really designed it so that you could pick your play style.
It's very interesting. And I know you're more art, so we'll get to I think there's some very art questions I'm curious about in a second too, but I'm very curious on this for a second of how do you build those levels kind of to support both players? Because I assume inherently then one player has to have a harder time than the other player if you just solely went on one of the two ways.
Well, the in co-op, both players have their command ship and they share the colony, and they also share control over the units. But they're colored based on who built them, so you can tell who built what, and if you're nice, you don't mess with the other player's stuff. But it's very much a combined effort. So I wouldn't say it's really harder for one player than another, but it does help to have kind of a synergistic tactic.
You're like, well, we would hope players are nice. We all know you're gonna have the two sets of players who go, "Oh, I'm not taking a unit. I swear that was the last time." As they grabbing the units and just moving them everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. Well, our policy has always been more pro, freedom versus guiding the player where we want them to be. We kind of want players to have the opportunity to make their own mistakes and learn from them. I really don't like it when games try to force you to play a certain way and do exactly what they want you to do.
Not a concern there that it'd be easier for a player to get frustrated then if it's too open.
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. To mitigate that, we do start the game off pretty simplified. So they only have a few things unlocked, and then as they go through the game, that all branches out and things become much more available. So our hope is that by starting them off a little easy, they can get a good feel for it and avoid some of that frustration. Another thing we did was integrating checkpoints with every enemy wave. So if you screw up royally, you can uh, just revert to the last wave. You don't have to restart the whole mission like a lot of games make you do.
That's something I'd say on the plus side from me, or from a usability point of view, because I think that's always what I felt too in big, we'll say big RTSs of oh, here's a 40-minute mission. Crap, I messed up at 35-minute mark. Or crap, I messed up at the 1-minute mark, and I knew it's still the 35-minute mark. It's always the problem, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. And especially on tower defense games where you die to the last boss just by a tiny little bit and then you have to start it all over. We wanted to never have that be an issue.
I think the fundamental question always in those is, and it's for the player it has to figure out is, when did I make that mistake? Because you don't know you made the mistake immediately.
Yeah, definitely. So another thing we do to help mitigate that is we we implemented a complete 100% refund for any units that are destroyed or salvaged. So if you find you made a mistake, you can salvage the building and then get all your resources back and build something else. There's, of course, still the time constraint. So you do have, a limit to the amount of time you can be building before you're attacked. And there's also the consideration that existing units and buildings will gain veterancy. And if you they die or they get salvaged, they lose that veterancy. So there is an incentive to not just salvage everything all the time. But if you make a mistake, you can salvage it without losing resources.
And that again, I think that's a very interesting, and I feel we're getting into this point in this genre and a lot of those genres. I feel like that used to be harder to get to the general mainstream, where like the little stuff like that, where that way it's more forgivable to the player, and I think that's going to be really strong for that in the long term.
Yeah, that's what our hope was. We wanted to lower the frustration as much as possible without destroying the underlying challenge. So if you make a lot of mistakes early on, um, there are cases where you might have to replay the mission. But if if your strategy is decent, if you've been making fairly good choices, then you should be all right.
I think now is kind of what I'm going to jump into. Your specialty, obviously, to talk about is you did the art for the game. What
Yeah,
what was your inspiration for this general look of the game? Which I think, to me, it feels sci-fi, obviously, but I feel you guys almost have a more, I think of like a neo look or a cyberpunky kind of look, kind of with the lights and stuff.
yeah. My main inspiration was a mix between Planetary Annihilation, Supreme Commander, and a little bit of StarCraft. Um, Maybe swap out Supreme Commander with Total Annihilation. It kind of became its own beast at some point, but the baseline really was Planetary Annihilation, which had a much more simplified art style, but I enjoyed the game a lot, and I was really struck by how such a simple art style didn't detract from how fun it was.
So immediately I got asked then, because you're talking about how you did the art of the game. Were
Mhm.
you the only one doing art, or is there like a team of you doing art on this game?
It was just me.
So,
Yeah, it did take about 4 years, but I got it done eventually.
so that is a massive constraint on you and your guys' team too. You are the art pipeline of like
Yeah.
there are only so many hours in a day. There's only so much you physically could produce to, or you could produce a lot, but there's only physically per item how much detail you put into it.
Yeah, and we're not quite done yet. We still are going into an early access period, and I plan to do, a few polish phases and get stuff looking a little bit better. But yeah, I think we're pretty happy with how it's looking so far.
So one of the things I feel in a game like this, with art especially, is being able to look at the map or the arena really quickly and tell what's happening. So I'm curious, while you're producing art, kind of what, anything you did particular to make sure your stuff was uniquely readable on that screen?
Yeah, that just kind of happened. I mean, I wish I could say I had a grand plan for it, but when I created the maps, I just kind of blocked out the basic paths and areas that I thought would work well for that map, and then I just created the geometry and the style after that. So one thing we do to make it really clear what's happening is we have these dynamic enemy path waves. So you can see at all times where the enemies plan to go, and that updates even as you place buildings. So I think it's a pretty unique real-time feedback system.
Inherently unique, because we talked about in the beginning, is tower defenses either naturally, because of AI, tended to have that very massive constraint on them of like, you can place things here or
Hmm.
around this area because this is my path. I can't change my path.
Yeah, and in this case, even if the enemies are already spawned and you build something while they're attacking, they'll adjust their paths dynamically even during a battle. So it took our programmer a while to get that working really clean, especially because there can be so many enemies on the screen at a time, and every single one is actually calculating their individual paths on the fly. But it's working, and it's fast and clean.
I love the, to be fair, that is the best line always of game development. You go, it's working.
Yeah.
And that's when everyone stands up, gives an applause, and walks away.
Yeah, definitely.
So, so then, keeping on that thing of like readability, though, one of the things that amazes me again is the amount of things on a screen at one time in this game, because
Hmm.
I feel I could still look at each individual object and see a level of polish and detail there, and I'm really curious on like throughout development there had to be an issue at some points of like processing with all of this art, right?
Um, not not really for me. Just because our programmer is uh, he's he's really quite something else. He wrote the entire 3D engine and everything from scratch, so he was able to really optimize things on a level that I think a lot of games wouldn't be able to if they were using an engine like Unity or Unreal. So yeah, he's managed to really optimize a lot of stuff without having super heavy-handed art constraints.
Immediately very interesting. I didn't realize you were using a custom engine for this. I guess it makes a lot of sense because the nature of again troop count and item count and all that stuff. But I naturally a lot of times just have made the assumption with a lot of indie games, unless I've heard otherwise, that they're running off of a predeveloped engine just because again the nature of the time that takes.
Yeah, definitely. And the pre-built engines are great. I'm nothing against them, but I I think since we had the capability to create our own engine, it was a big advantage to us. Our programmer has been building 3D engines for pretty much as long as 3D engines have existed. So he has a lot of experience with that.
Yes, so you have one of the good ones. It sounds like that's again really happy for
Yeah,
you and the
yeah.
team. You hear that you have one of the good ones because I've heard too many stories. They're like, yeah, I decided to start making an engine. 6 months later, I went, why the fuck did I do that? But I'm stuck in this engine.
Yeah, definitely.
So okay, so the big thing now, you guys are now coming out publicly now in the summer. What it's sticking with, but you're going into early access.
Yeah, yeah, and a big part of that is we want to hyper polish and balance everything in the game. We really want it to be um, extremely well liked by the time we leave early access. So we're going to be listening to the community and reviews quite a bit during that time period. And we're um, on the art side, I'm going to be doing a lot of polishing, listening to the community, possibly adding new things. So it should be pretty exciting, but we're very committed to modifying the game to meet the community's needs. And to that end, for our closed beta period, we've already added a feedback button that allows users to send messages directly to the programmer right from within the game.
A very dangerous button. He's going to turn that button off with like days. I can just give like a week after launch. He's gonna be like, I disabled the button. It still works. They think it works, but it's disabled.
Well, if he gets overwhelmed, he might forward those to me, but I'll make sure that everyone gets read.
I just guarantee, if I was supposed to have the programmer being like, I could turn this button off. Yeah, okay, it works. It totally works.
Yeah, for sure.
So immediately, without spoiling what it is, I've got to ask: do you have a list in your head or written down somewhere of stuff you think you're working on early access? And then, what are the odds you actually stick to that list?
Yeah, I have a base list for what I plan to be working on. Um, and I'm sure I'll get to all of it, but the X factor is all the stuff that's going to come up that people will ask or that I'll notice myself. And yeah, I think with the way that we've developed this and what well we're going into early access with almost a finished game. It is a finished game according to our original specs. So at this point, we have a lot of room and time to enhance beyond the original specs to get it to something that we know people will like.
So early access to me is always interesting because it's this thing of every game thinks like to them it means something different. So
Hmm.
when you guys are going in early access, so do you guys? So it sounds to you guys, it feels much more as a like open beta than it does to like development's a better way to put it.
Basically, yeah. So the underlying intent going into it is very much like an open beta for polishing and testing. But I think the difference is that if we see a lot of people requesting something, we're going to make that happen. So where a normal open beta, it's really just for finding bugs and polishing. But in our case, we still are ready and willing to do actual development according to what the community wants.
So I'm gonna push you a little bit just on this question. So because I'm really curious, because especially how you're defining this game as physically you described some capacity of a complete product already, and it's a lot more adding what will come up. What
Hmm.
then based on that standard then how are you guys gonna what are you guys using to kind of define the game as done for a full release?
Well, that's going to depend quite a bit on the community. If people are all liking it, if they all see it as a complete product, then we'll finish the polish and balancing phase and then release and then launch it fully. We're planning on the early access period only being about 4 months, but if there's major issues, if people want more features, then we'll take the time and do that.
That's a good answer. So I'm gonna one more hard question that I know you're gonna not answer at all. It says summer 2020. Is that can I have anything more specific, or are you still sticking with the summer date?
We're planning on July 1st.
July 1st, 2020. So you have
Hmm.
a little under 3 months to get this sucker ready.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, we're pretty much ready now, but we do want to build up, uh, more wish lists. We want more people to be able to see it when it starts, so that we get more data very early on. That's our that's our main goal. We really want to get a really good feel for how people perceive it and what they want us to add.
Perfect. So just to clarify everyone then, the game is Colony Siege. It's colonysiege.com and it's Colony, if I could speak, Siege on Steam. They need to wishlist the game, share it with all your friends. Any of the other stuff they need to do that I don't understand about game development?
Oh, well, we do have a Discord if they want to come in and hang out and post suggestions in there. We're always happy to have that.
Perfect. Nice. And the Discord is listed straight on your website.
It is, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I want to say thank you for joining me during our. I'm calling it our fun quarantine. It's really not fun, but it's like the optimistic way of saying fun. Um, got us all to do something for a bit. So yeah, thanks for joining me for this. Best of luck on completing the game then with your final 3 month stretch before early access.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on.
Perfect. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of my fun, as I call them, the Corona interviews, because we're all in our fun isolation, quarantine, whatever you call it. I'm a fun interview episode today. I am Mike. This here I have with me as a special guest is not named AJ. I know, like usual, we're all really excited. So can you tell me what your name is and what game you are currently working on?
Hey everyone, I'm Clem, and I'm working on Mad Experiments Escape Room.
Whew. So first initial thing, Clem, I've got to ask. So obviously, based on your accent, I'm going to say you're not from America.
And I'm not. I'm French, and I'm living right now in Montreal, in Canada.
So when you say you're French, are you actually from France then?
Yeah. I'm from a city near Bordeaux. So yeah. Real French
You in real French to
from the
like
countryside.
to the French part of Canada. So yeah, you couldn't get much more French. So if you moved to America, you'd move to New Orleans, is what that means. I understand.
Yeah, that would be quite the same.
I'm just it's the most French area probably in America. So like I was like, where's our French
Yeah,
equivalency?
yeah.
So yeah, so you're here talking about Mad Experiments Escape Room, which let's start with what is like what would you call as like the elevator pitch of this game?
So Mad Experiment Escape Room is a multiplayer puzzle game where you're trapped in a room and up to 6 players have to solve puzzles and explore the clues on the room and think about really hard puzzles. I don't know if you tried, and you'll tell me the difficulty of it, but so yeah, they have to solve puzzles together to get out of the room. They have 60 minutes to do this, and they discover a narrative in the room as they solve the different puzzles, and they discover why they're here and a bit more about the place.
So I've got the ask the immediate obvious question. Do you like escape rooms a lot in real life? I'm going to take it.
Yeah, I love it. In Montreal, there's a lot of different escape rooms, and me and my girlfriend, we actually are quite fan of it. And it's a shame we can do them right now these days, and I don't know how long it's gonna last. So yeah, but yeah, so I really like escape rooms.
So
And sorry.
no, I was gonna say. So what's interesting about it is, so the theme this one kind of reminds me of like, I picture it as like the British manners, kind of like what it feels like I'm in.
Yeah, exactly.
So I during your time maybe doing escape rooms and obviously doing research for the game, do you feel like what maybe are like some of the escape rooms that kind of stuck out to you theme wise or puzzle wise that kind of really influenced this game as we go into it more?
Um, Well, I've tried a couple, but a lot were single player, so that was a bummer. So because I love to play with my friends, and so first that inspired me to do the actual opposite and try to do multiplayer, and then for the puzzle mechanics, I don't know, I'd like to do some puzzles online and everything, so that inspired me a bit. And for the theme, yeah, just imagine some kind of a mad scientist, and it was just like I wanted him to be British, and because I just love the accent. I don't know, and yeah, and the place it came out as I was producing it. At first, you start with really nothing, and then you build the thing, and I didn't have a really clear idea in my mind at first, but then it just came up as I was building it.
That's very interesting because I feel when I was you were nice enough to give me some keys to kind of go through it with some people and test it even on my own. I got to test a bit, and I think what's interesting is the room, like you're in those kind of rooms, like actually feel really well put together, and they feel like it feels. Okay, maybe minus the fire in front of the door, it feels like almost like a natural living place. And that's why I
Well,
find very
nice. Thank you.
interesting that like you kind of kept going. So did you come up with the puzzles of the respective rooms first, and then the theme kind of came in after, or did you have like a story plot in mind? How did you kind of go about making
So I started with a plot. That I mean everything you have to iterate. And it goes through different phases, and some ideas just die, and so you start with I started with just a plot that had changed a lot. And then he gave me the theme of the room. Then I started with a room, and then in this room I would imagine some puzzles that would fit in there. And yeah, I iterated a lot. You start with a puzzle, you play test with some friends, and you see what works and what don't, and yeah, you have to play test a lot. So that's what I did, and the cycle is always plot, room, and then the puzzle after. And then everything has to be tied together. If it's not tied to at least 2 or 3 elements in the room, I would just eliminate it.
them?
So
Interesting.
yeah, to make everything feels cohesive, and I tried, but it took me it takes a lot of time, because you have to iterate a lot and to try again, and sometimes you start from scratch. So yeah.
Well, one of the things that I think when we just started the conversation a couple minutes ago that you immediately is you have this. It feels like obviously, and I'm going to say this about escape rooms in general a lot is the toughness of the puzzles, and I'm curious while you're making this, and you said you've even testing this with people before, like what to you was like the right balance of how hard a puzzle should be, and maybe like what are some examples of puzzles that like way out of scope of like the difficulty?
Um, well, at first, I wanted just the game to be hard because I tried the other games, on the market, and uh, they were medium, and so I felt okay. We need some other games where people like me that they love puzzles, they do puzzles for years, so they know the mechanics. So you need to come with really different ideas or f up ideas to make fun and engaging for the hardcore players. And I tested it with friends and some people online, and the difficulty really comes when it's not the puzzle itself, it's how you explain it to the players. And the way to explain it are clues. And so the clues are really the key of making for me a good puzzle in an escape room, because this is the balance of difficulty that you manage it's through the clues. And so I tend to use that a lot, to make it not too easy and not too obvious.
So, on that note, then, so what to you was like see some of your puzzles have multiple steps to them of like kind of because you might see like a puzzle in its fifth step and you have to kind of work your way back.
Yeah.
What is the number do you think to that of like when is it too much for people to understand?
It depends. I mean, if you're alone, it could be really hard because you have a lot of thinking to do, and um, the order is not explicit either. You don't really know what you have to do first. There's few clues here and there, visual clues, but if you're alone, you could be lost at the beginning and everything. So if you're in group, um, it's not that hard. It's I mean, depending on the clues and yeah, for me, it's not that hard. Group in the group session.
Much more do you kind of like when it's the smaller groups or the solos kind of like where you hit those bottlenecks?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen a lot of group of 4 and 5 people solving it in 30, 40 minutes, but it depends on the skills of people, and individually. You'd have to be a complementary, a team that can do a lot of different that has a lot of different puzzle skills.
Yeah, so that's actually a very interesting feat to me is so you inherently have time limits in your rooms because that's a very common escape room thing. What I find
Yeah.
interesting about it is so obviously the reason we have in real life those time limits is a monetary reason of that's their time limit. What to you then do you feel then you adding the time limit was like just a goal just to add pressure to the players or kind of what was your thought process of keeping that time limit mechanic in it?
Yeah, I wanted to have some kind of pressure and to put some kind of pressure on the players and to force them to think quick and to act and to organize as a team, um, to be efficient. But it's interesting you asked the question because during the beta, a lot of players asked for a kind of relaxed mode where you don't have a time limit. So that's something I'm gonna implement right after release. That is actually in 2 weeks, on the 16th. But yeah, so the time limit. I'm gonna propose a different mode for to remove it. If you want to do the room casually, take your time, no pressure. For the more kind of competitive players, or the people that just want to have the same feeling, you have in a real escape room. Then there will be the more standard mode with time limit.
Interesting. So, do you feel then? This is probably more of a metaphor of escape rooms in your game, say, but do you feel an escape room is really only an escape room? Is it partially because of that time limit? Is kind of what makes it escape room fundamentally?
Well, the setting too. The setting being trapped, that is the most prominent feature for me.
I've always found it interesting because
What
obviously
is it for you?
it's just because it's the idea of an escape room obviously is the escape room. Like that's kind of why it's called that.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but because in real life there is the monetary constraints and you have to get so many people through these things of we've added other mechanics and features into them that are there more for those logistical reasons. And I'm always curious when we put these in these digital formats, we don't have to have those reasons, that we still determine them as an important piece of the experience.
Yeah.
So that's just always what's intrigued me about it. I guess to me I do agree that it is the puzzles on a fundamental level. That actually gets me to an interesting question is so obviously in escape rooms in real life we're tied to real life features of what we can and cannot do.
Yeah.
What is like going through as you've built this? What are your favorite things that you've done in the escape room with spoiling with what you feel like spoiling? That you like this is something I couldn't have done in real life, and that's why it's really cool to put in this kind of escape room.
Well, yeah. So I won't spoil it, but there's a part that it was especially built for that. It's funny you asked the question because it's something that I really thought about, a puzzle that you couldn't do in real life, and that should be only video game possible. And then so there's you kind of by solving a puzzle, you discover a device that if when you use it, you transfer your spirit to another thing. I won't spoil anything else.
And that's fundamentally the very interesting way to tease it. I'll give you that. And yes, I'd hope in real life we couldn't actually do that. So that's a good example of something in those.
Not
lines.
yet. Yeah. Not yet. So yeah.
Nice. Okay, so I'm curious more. Maybe let's pull back in this game a second. So you are fundamentally an indie developer, and because building this game, having to build the community naturally, all of that fun pieces of it. What
Yeah.
has been the struggles of getting noticed, or any of that, like the stuff of like game development that is that we think of as secondary game development, but it is like the social media, the getting noticed, the getting on these lists, that has been either really challenging or surprisingly rewarding, kind of going through this process.
So the question is, what are the most efficient ways of
No, like
promoting
maybe
myself?
even more like going through your experience, like what have you found like really challenging, and like also like what have you found like really rewarding, kind of going through that.
Yeah. Well, it's a fight of every day. It's you always have to find ways of trying to get a few seconds of attention from people around online. There's so many content every week, every day, released, on Steam or on or consoles. So I try to be consistent. It's really hard these days. But I try to post, on Twitter, Reddit, my progress, do some videos. I should be more involved in this. I know, but it's really tough to find the time, between game dev and marketing. So yeah, it's tough. You have to find ways to like hack your way into the system and into people's eyes, just to get some eyeballs on your product and try to make them follow you and then wishlist the game on Steam. That's very very important search algorithm. So yeah, you have to chase those wish lists and eyeballs. That's it. And on in every way possible, free way if you could.
One of the other things I've noticed, and I've noticed a trend with games that can get away with it, we'll call it, is the idea of obviously you're building a natural community in like a Discord, and then on top of that, you're giving away either or in some capacity like either free keys or stuff like that to help with like beta testing and stuff like that in the game. Have you found that being a really efficient way of getting the game out there, at least in front of people's eyes, and all of the testing and stuff naturally? Then.
Yeah. It was really helpful to get the game out and build something around it. And I mean, there's a lot of people on my Discord, but a lot of most of the activity on it is made by maybe 30 to 50 people that are really involved into the project. And in there, I've just found the core of my players, and the people that I should ask for ideas and feedback, and they're not just there to beta test and find the bugs. They need to inspire the new puzzles and mechanics. So yeah, it had a double effect, like getting the game out there, and plus building a core community around the game.
And so you said, I believe you said early in this talk, did you say, so originally what I was saying was the game was April. So did you say the date was now April 16th, was that?
Yeah. So actually, a few days ago, I've decided to release the game on the 16th in early access, just with the first room. Because I'm in quarantine. Everyone is, and I find it funny just to you're stuck at home, but I'm gonna release an escape room. So I find it like I should pull back the release date a bit. And anyway, I will be late for the second room because I don't have the time I should have if I wasn't in quarantine, because I have a toddler at home and I have to take care of. So I decided to just release on the 16th, early access, the first room there, and then the second room and the third room for free, of course, ASAP. So I guess the second room will be end of May, early June, and the second room is it's linked to the first room, and there's a narrative going on, and it's not a total different room. It's the narrative continues, the story continues, and yeah. So release on the 16th.
Correct. So you said early access on the 16th. So I'm going to be genuinely curious of when that comes out, of how different it is going from your tighter niche Discord testers to the general public. 'Cause that's always the fun part of early access. You're like, this worked. Oh crap.
Exactly. I think I've patched the game 40 times since I've started the early December, so it should be pretty solid, but we'll see. I mean, bug-wise, it should be okay, but sales-wise, we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well, Clem, thank you for sitting down with me to talk about escape rooms and your game. So you said April 16th, Mad Experiments Escape Room. What is your website or any of the other spots people should be able to find you?
Playtogether-studio.com, or you just check out on Steam Mad Experiment Escape Room, or just type escape room. I think I'm in one of the first results.
So our goal is to get you the first result. I understand.
Yeah. And wishlist the game is really important. Wishlist.
That is the number one rule for of anyone who wants to put up any indie game ever that's not out yet. Wishlist and get as many people humanly possible to wishlist that game. Steam's algorithm is messed up as hell, and if you wishlist the game, it just mystically appears higher. No one's quite sure what the numbers are either, because it's not like, oh, it's a wishlist 10 times, now goes up a spot. No, it's like, oh, I got wishlist 100 times today, now I'm up to 50 spots, but tomorrow I'm down 20.
Well, yeah, we never know. It's very obscure. Yeah, but they're good. They're good in making it obscure. I mean, you have to make it weird and not um, understandable, because otherwise it could be hacked, and so it's good. Good chance for everyone.
Well, I'd still argue more transparent is good, but you're right. Anyway, thanks again for talking to me today, and enjoy the rest of your night in cold, cold Canada.
Thanks a lot for having me, Mike.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview episode of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and we're back with what I'm calling another quarantine edition episode, because all of us are in some capacity locked in basements, attics, or houses, just not on the streets, and stay home, I believe are the rules we're being told. Anyway, can you please tell me your name and the game you are currently working on?
Yeah, my name is Josh Pierce, and I'm working on a game called Rez PLZ.
Rez, please. So immediately, I've got to ask the obvious question. How many times have people been like, is this a sequel to Rez?
I don't even know what Rez is, honestly. I think I've heard that a couple times though, but I'm not that familiar with that game. Is that the one that's like a top-down shooter kind of game?
If I thought Rez was Rez was the rhythm game, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Like Rez
I'm
Infinite,
not familiar with that.
Because Rez is what I'm thinking of. It's like a rhythm game, and the Rez Infinite was the one that E3 one year, when the one guy had the giant suit in VR.
Old Dreamcast game.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, totally. No, actually, I haven't heard much of that. I think people have said things about games with the word Rez in it before, but I think a lot of people associate it with like World of Warcraft as like their like main jumping off point, because like they were always asking for Rezes from the priest or whatever in there. That was kind of where it came from. But it's interesting to see what people associate with it. And some people just have no idea. They're like Rez PLZ, and I'm like, an attempt was made,
Nice. So, how about this? Can you tell me? Yeah. So, Rez plays game you're working on. Your Long Neck Games. What is Long Neck Games?
Yeah, so Long Neck Games is a childhood dream of my brother and I. So that's the company basically, is me and my brother. We basically were working on this kind of prototype for the last 4 years in our spare time, and then last year we actually quit our day jobs to work on the game full time. It's kind of a weird story. I mean, it's a little dark, but it's got a sweet part to it. Basically, the only reason we were able to actually work on the game full time is our mom was like our biggest fan. She really, really believed in us and just wanted us to have everything she could. But she was diagnosed with brain cancer, and so when she passed away last year, she really wanted us to take the time to just sit down and finish the game. So part of her gift was in allowing us to do that. And so this whole project, the whole concept of Long Neck Games, has basically been in her honor and just trying to like live up to that expectation from her of following our dream. So that's basically how we came to be what we are.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot sadder than I thought it would be, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really positive. Like, it's just such a tough note to like kind of lead on, but it's like truly where we come from, So I feel like if I don't explain that, like it's kind of like not the same as like what our real mission is,
No, that makes sense, and obviously that I think hopefully I was saying we'll have a good ending at the end, but no, that is a very interesting way of how this all worked out to be. So yeah, So what, maybe in better terms, so what would you describe Rez PLZ as, or what would you say it's similar to?
Yeah, so at its core, Rez PLZ is a co-op puzzle platformer where you play as two wizard brothers that aren't particularly good at magic. So the only spell that they start the game with is actually the ability to resurrect each other. So part of the core mechanic of the game is actually having to sacrifice each other in order to progress in the game. And that's kind of where the Rez PLZ part comes in.
Please tell me you can also kill each other and then res each other if you really wanted to.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's definitely, it's a game made by brothers, so we definitely have some grief mechanics in it. It really harkens back to like our childhood of playing, Nintendo and Super Nintendo games, and like kind of the classic way you played as a kid was you'd rent something from Blockbuster, if your audience is old enough to know what a Blockbuster is. I know that's kind of like becoming like a dated thing now, but you'd basically, you'd rent a game and then you'd you take turns playing it. One player would die, and then the other person would hop on the controller. And so this is kind of our weird, like, kind of like, 25 years later solution to that is basically creating a game where it was a platformer, but you both work together all the time. So it was more cooperative. It's kind of more like Super Mario meets like Lost Vikings or something, where there's like an element of like, coordination to it that just you don't really get in your average like co-op game that's of this ilk.
Interesting. So in my head, I was thinking, I think it's Brothers was the name of the Xbox Live game. I really think of like where people had to work together.
Yeah, it's definitely got some similarities to that too. It's not quite as like it's not quite as set up as Brothers. I feel like is like kind of more like these like stationed puzzles that are like you work together, and we do have that element too. But kind of the overall flow of the game is always working together. It's always like one of the little mechanics we have in the game is you can alley-oop the other player. So one player will crouch down, the other player will run into them, and then they get like a boosted jump. To get them up to higher places. So now that player is up higher than the other player can get to. So those kinds of things happen a lot in the game. But the other thing is it is designed to be a one-player game as well. So you can actually switch controls between the two brothers if you're just playing one player as well. So we kind of designed it around kind of catering to both audiences.
So immediately I've got to ask the obvious question, since it sounds like it's both you and your brother's first real game like this. Do you guys have a game background, or is this kind of like you guys have been learning as you're going?
Yeah, so we're definitely, I think we're like whatever they consider like a garage band for, game studios. We've just kind of been teaching ourselves how to develop video games over the last 5 or 6 years. My brother actually started out, he was doing some programming in Unity for other stuff. He was learning kind of C# and other things. So just to kind of give you the designations here, I do all the art and marketing stuff and all like the kind of aesthetic end of things. And then my brother does all the programming. So he was teaching himself how to do, general programming, general C# stuff. And then he got involved in a game jam. So Portland has a really strong indie game scene. And we have this thing called Portland Indie Game Squad, which is like our local indie game community. And they had a big game jam for Adult Swim. And he went and participated in that game jam and got like 3rd place with his team. And it like kind of gave him a taste of like how achievable really game development was going to be. But also it just kind of made him realize how boring the other stuff he was working on was. So it was like really, really kind of made him want to shift gears. And it's always been like, ever since we were kids, I know a lot of people probably say this, but like, it's been our dream since kids to work on a video game. And then, life kind of got in the way. Like we got real jobs, we had day jobs. I was, working in healthcare, and my brother was a bartender at an Applebee's for a while. And, it was just like, we knew that wasn't our ultimate dream, but like, you get comfortable. And so with the advent of Unity and kind of the more accessible ways of learning this stuff, we've always been pretty naturally inclined for that. We just taught ourselves how to do it from scratch. Yeah. So
since you're more art, that's kind of I'm gonna jump at this then. Immediately sure. I've got to ask, did you just look at like every single 80s cartoon and go, that's what I want for my art style? Like, what is the inspiration? Because that's one of the things that I feel like I hit immediately is this like, feels very 80s aesthetic.
Oh, well, I'm really glad you got that, because that definitely was an influence. So like, just to kind of give you a little more of my background, I said I worked in healthcare recently, but my background's actually in sculptural art. I worked in stop motion industry for a while. So I did a lot of sculpture. I used to make my own like resin figures and sell them online. So I had like my own storefront and kind of had like my own artist brand of things. So like I've had a lot of experience in producing different stuff, but I've always kind of had like these kind of running influences. I'm a huge Dungeons and Dragons nerd. So like the 80s Dungeons and Dragons like influence and like late 70s, D&D influence is definitely there in our game. It's very like classic fantasy. I've got gelatinous cubes and beholders and things like that kind of snuck in there as one wants to do. But yeah, I've always like really liked that aesthetic of like kind of just like the general like 80s-ness of stuff where it's not trying to take itself too seriously. Even our soundtrack is like very influenced by like 80s horror movies. That was like one of my big art directions on that was like working with our composer in the UK and basically, just giving him a lot of samples of like John Carpenter and like, different like cheesy horror movie soundtracks. Cause I feel like there's just something so like genuinely campy and also like just stylish to the 80s aesthetic for things that I really wanted to get into our game.
Okay, yeah, but like for the record, immediately you look and go, okay, you guys have some influence. Because I feel like what I think hits it immediately to me is not even like it immediately has the vibe of like if I describe like what people in the 80s wanted for a video game to look like, I feel like this is what it hits. It obviously doesn't look like it because it's not grainy, it's not this, but it's very much the like, no, this where you got the feeling right versus the actuality of the 80s, right?
Oh yeah. So yeah, in terms of like the pixel art and stuff, yeah, we definitely tried to go for like something that felt like a classic video game, but had some kind of updated, elements to it. Really trying to like thread that needle, which was kind of a conscious decision and kind of unconscious. Part of the issue was I'm not really keen on doing something super low res. I just find myself wanting to pack in like more and more little details. I kind of wish I had been a little more low res because it would have been a little easier, I think. I wouldn't have to do quite so many pixels on everything. But we definitely tried to like kind of get something that had that kind of classic feel to it for sure.
Immediately, just because there's such a variation of art look in your game, I'll immediately make you pick your baby. What is either I'll give you broad enough so you have a little bit easier picking this time. What was either your favorite to work on or your favorite look of like the levels that you've kind of come out and shown people so far?
So my favorite level to work on, I think, is the inner space level. So basically, kind of the third chapter of the story, the boys get swallowed by a dragon, which is like a little bit of a spoiler, but not really, because it's fun. It's not that heavy of a narrative. But basically they get swallowed by a giant dragon. And one of my like favorite like movie tropes is the inner space thing. Magic School Bus episode where they get shrunk down real small and they go inside the kid's body to see why he's sick and all that stuff, right? That's just like such a classic trope to me, and I've always like really, really loved it. And I kind of knew that I like wanted to play with that a little bit and do our own little version of that. So that was like really satisfying for me to work on that. Also, it's like super gooey. There's lots of like weird little like scaly, spiny, fleshy, lumpy, weird things. The doors look like these big like kind of aorta valve things that kind of close and open, as like you go through the rooms, like the different chambers or whatever. It's just really gooey and gross and kind of gnarly. But I don't know, it was really fun to work on. And like just making like that whole trope be a thing in our game was really, really satisfying.
So I've got to ask the obvious dumb question, because dragons aren't real. So what do you use for inspiration in like that kind of thing of like, is there like 80s cartoons that show similar things, or do you just kind of be like, okay, let's take the human stuff and make it look scaly?
Yeah, so part of the way I kind of problem solved it is I looked at kind of other references for it and tried to come up with a scale that I thought was going to make sense for what I wanted to do. So, when you're talking about like internal organs and stuff and being the size of a blood cell, if you're the size of a blood cell, you're pretty much going to only be inside of veins, right? Like that's how it's going to work as a cell, or you're going to be at that scale. So I kind of didn't really hang on to much of that, like actual anatomic proportioning of it. But I did basically take, some references from different kinds of tissues. So I looked at fat tissue. I looked at, tumors and things like that. Part of the thing about this dragon is he's also been kind of like inhabited by a parasite. So there's like little parasitic elements that kind of show up, these little tumors and lumps and spines and things that are like not natural to probably what the dragon's like normal internals look like. But those are added on top. So that kind of gave me an extra layer to work with and trying to tell a little bit of a story through the environment for how this worked. But a lot of it was just kind of taking textures and things and then trying to tile them out, make them kind of tile nicely and play with each other and kind of come up with these forms that were just like these undulating, more of the feeling of it than anything else to kind of set the stage. And then I put scales on the inside because I was like, I wanted something to help break up the fleshiness of everything, so it wasn't just constantly like this grayish pinkish color, and give it a little contrast, but also kind of remind you that you're inside a dragon and not just inside of like, a giant sumo wrestler or something,
So I did not expect you to say that you looked up actual human tissue as comparison. That's the perspective. Like I expect you to be like, well, I just genuinely nope. You full blown did your research, and I gotta give you props on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's far from anatomically correct, but I think it's good to as an artist, it's good to look up references for things all the time. Like I know that like for me growing up, it was always, I kind of had this like golden ring in my head of, oh, well, I have to come up with everything off the top of my head. If I'm not if I'm not creating something from scratch, I'm not creating, But I think really like references are really, really important. And it's one of the things I learned when I worked in stop motion was it's just you need something to give you a jumping off point for your ideas. And also it just helps inform better decisions that you're going to make in your designs. If you're just always trying to come up with it from scratch, you just don't have that clear of a mental picture of most things to do like a really bang out of the park home run job on your first try, second try, third try, that you could get when you just looked at something for reference,
Interesting. So jumping back, because we talked about how, so immediately you said the reason it's called Rez Please fundamentally is because you start with the power of Rez. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, and obviously based on what you've announced, talk about too, what are some of your other like favorite powers in the game kind of to play with?
Yeah, so as you progress through the game, you will unlock new spells. But the like real caveat and kind of the overall story of this game is you're underdogs. You're never going to be superheroes. So it's always kind of a battle against your inability to get things done. That's just like part of the game. So as you unlock new spells, they sound really awesome, but they don't necessarily always have like super awesome results. So a good example is later on you'll unlock the ability to turn into a stone golem, which sounds really badass, but in all actuality, you turn into a boulder with a face on it that has little tiny arms and legs and can't move. And so now you kind of have to figure out how to make that work for you, right? And so that's a big part of the spells in the game, and the progress of it is it's always kind of making the most of a bad situation. So with that said, one of my favorite spells is there's a telekinesis spell that you can lift things with your mind, smaller things. It's as a Dungeons and Dragons guy, it's like a lower level telekinesis spell, mage hand, if you will. But that has its limitations because the longer you hold something in the air, the more stress it puts on your character, and eventually his head will explode if you don't set it down. So you only have a limited window of time to move things around. And then the reason that's my favorite thing is I really enjoy doing the death animations in the game, and that death animation is directly influenced by the scene in Scanners. Have you ever seen that movie, Scanners?
I think I have, no.
It's a classic horror movie, once again, 80s. So in Scanners, there's a scene where this guy telepathically blows up another guy's head, and there's this amazing shot. It's like famously used as a meme and GIF and all that stuff all over the internet. But basically, this like rubber head explodes, and the thing that makes it so satisfying is when they were actually doing the special effects for it, they were trying to do all these like squibs and little air pumps and stuff to like blow the head up. And finally, the guy that was doing the special effects just went out into his truck, got his shotgun, and propped underneath the head and shot it with a shotgun. And that's the shot that they used for the movie. It's like this ridiculous explodey head effect, and they do it in slow motion. And it's really, really satisfying. And so basically, I like frame by frame kind of like replicated that for our character, and that was really, really fun. Which I know is really gross and really dorky, but it's like totally the type of stuff we did with the game.
Which record? That's probably something like that's what makes it really fun. Which is, for record, you're way nicer than I would have been, because I would have totally done the power where it's not my head explodes, it's my partner's head that explodes, and that would have been the funnier part.
Sure, yeah. And there's definitely that stuff in the game too. The players can interact. There is collision between them. You have an attack ability, and you can totally knock each other out and knock each other into spikes and stuff like that. We've definitely, we've demoed this game for a few years now, from like the initial prototype and stuff. And we've seen a lot of like, especially brothers love to come up to the game, sit down, and they don't get the game done. Like they just sit there for 15 minutes and smack each other with sticks. And for some reason, they're like, couldn't be happier with it. And I'm like, you guys don't even know what the game's about, but I guess if you had a good time, more power to you. But yeah, so that's definitely part of it, is the grief factor.
So one of the other things which I think is impressive about you guys is, for, as you put it, I will call it a garage band of indie studio. You guys have a publisher for your game.
We do, yeah. So we just secured a publisher last November, yeah.
Who I don't know if I've heard of them, is Graffiti Games.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, kind of like, what you can talk about and willing to kind of like how that relationship came to be. Was it just you guys kept going to shows and ran into them, or? They actually reached out to us. So I think they'd seen us at PAX East last year, something along those lines. It had been PAX East.
And then, we kind of talked for a bit. Gosh, was it November? It had to have been before November. Anyways, I'm getting my timelines all mixed up, but so they'd contacted us. We'd kind of talked a little bit. We'd known that they'd worked with a couple of our developer friends in the industry, and we were familiar with kind of their portfolio. They're a smaller publisher, very much indie focused, but they definitely, we were basically at this point where, without being too like, here's how the sausage is made. We were at this point where we were kind of hitting our limit with our runway. The gift that our mom had given us was helpful, but it wasn't necessarily like an exorbitant amount to just work on the game forever. So we knew that we were going to be up against a wall with marketing support. We knew that we wanted to do porting for the game, and we knew we needed some support with that. And so that's where Graffiti came in, was to kind of help us with those like final chunks of those things, so we weren't just completely stretched to our bare minimum when we got to the finish line.
And then the other thing is, so you guys are doing the other indie game thing, which I always find intriguing. You're launching, if I'm correct, I don't know if it's day to date, but you're at least launching knownly on 3 different platforms, substantially speaking. Yeah.
So and it will be all same day release. So yeah, we're launching on Xbox and Switch. We've outsourced our Xbox porting to another developer that's helping us with that. But we're working on Switch and our PC, Steam, XYZ Windows versions simultaneously.
Which is funny, because in my head, especially it sounds like you're using Unity, I would think Xbox would be the easy one you could do, and house it, I'd be outputting the Switch one, not the other way around.
Yeah, which maybe in hindsight might have been the way to do it. I think we just wanted to try to do the Switch one, which may or may not be like the biggest challenge of this whole project, was actually biting off that chunk of Switch stuff. But it's kind of nice because it gives us the experience with it. And we knew we wanted to work on Switch, we were just so excited about the opportunity to work on a game, as kids that grew up on Nintendo games, like to make a game and release it on Nintendo and be the like force, having our hands in all of that was like a really big point of pride and worth the effort for us. So yeah, I'm guessing, I know our Xbox porting developer had his own issues kind of going through it, but I kind of think that maybe the Xbox One would have been a little easier, but hopefully it'll all be worth it. So it's definitely been a lot of work, though.
And to clarify, if he's listening, I don't mean easy, I mean easier. There's a fundamental difference between the two.
Yeah, no, his name's Anthony, and he's worth every penny, and he's a great guy. And if he's listening, nothing but good things to say about him. But I definitely, watching my brother go through the headaches of the Switch part, I really hope that Anthony didn't have to deal with as much hurdles as Nate had to deal with.
Perfect. So I'm going to ask now the obvious fun questions. We get to the tail end of this that had to be asked. Do you have a release date for the sucker, or do you have a timeline in mind? Is it still sometime this year?
We do have a release date. It's not officially announced yet, but it's going to be very soon. So I can say Q2 at this point of this year. So very soon. And we'll be revealing that probably in the next couple weeks here. So
it's Q2. Yeah. It's Rez PLZ on Nintendo Switch, Steam, and Xbox One. And you said the goal was simultaneously or within simultaneous window.
Yeah, they're all going to be same day releases. You can wishlist us now on Steam. We've got our store page up there and all that. And we'll put out on Switch. I know we'll be putting out a demo that you can play as well, probably within 2 weeks of release or a week or so people can get a little taste of it on the Switch. And we're really, really proud of how the Switch build's turning out. So really excited to share that with everybody.
Well, perfect. Well, I gotta say immediately, thanks, Josh, taking the busy time out of your day to sit down and talk to me about the game. I look forward to seeing how this all turns out then for you guys in the next couple months. Well, Josh,
no problem.
Thanks for the interview. This was my closing thing. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your time, and hopefully this all works out for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Mike. Have a good rest of your day, man.
Yep, you too. Bye.